Red Riding Hood, Wolf Hunter. Our tale begins in a place where so many other stories have started. The local bar. It is here that our heroine resides, awaiting her next client. If her hood was an effort to hide herself, it was doing a poor job. The blood-red color lent a great deal to her name. But the rest of the bar's occupants seemed too drunk to notice the legend sitting in their midst. Perhaps it was here that the hood served any purpose of disguise, for the young woman's fiery red hair and beautiful features would have attracted a great deal of attention from the men behind her, despite the permanent frown upon her face. As it was, she sat in silence, awaiting her next employer. The bartender approached once more, this time offering conversation instead of drink. So, the bartender began. Red Riding Hood. I've heard a lot of stories. Perhaps you could tell me which ones are true? The young woman glanced toward the door, catching sight of her contact. Perhaps another time, she told the bartender. The woman who had just entered, Red's client, was beginning to attract staring eyes and a few whistles from those in their drunken stupor. Red arose from her chair and made her way to the woman's table. You must be Ella, our heroine said, taking a seat by the nervous woman. And you must be Red Riding Hood, the woman said, relaxing a little. It's just Red. Very well then, Red. I was hoping you might be able to help me. You see, my town was attacked by a pack of wolves with a very large alpha. I've dealt with wolves before. It's kind of what I do. I know. That's why I came to you. I lost so much in the last attack. My husband, my brother, my home, and the illusions of safety I had left. Red recalled her own losses, back when the wolves had begun their attacks. No one had seen it coming. The numbers were thought to be thin, if not completely eradicated. But these creatures of fur and fangs, these beasts who knew no fear, had returned to wipe humanity from the earth. Cities became their hunting grounds as the beasts went on their spree, slaughtering so many in their paths. With their tremendous speed and incredible numbers, they had managed to drive people from their cities, forcing them to build heavily fortified colonies to keep the beasts out. Red had been a little girl when all this had taken place. She'd lost all but her grandmother to the wolves' slaughter. Red felt a great deal of empathy for the woman before her. She knew her pain all too well. I'll find the pack. You'll get your revenge. You can rest assured knowing that they'll never come after you again, Red tells her. Thank you, the woman said. Just then, one of the drunks approached the woman. Well, hello there, the man said, his speech just beginning to slur. I was wondering if maybe you and I could get to know each other a little better. I'm afraid I'm not interested, the woman said, trying to hide the tears in her eyes. Oh, come on, the man said. It'll be fun. I believe she said she wasn't interested, Red told the man. Well, oh, maybe I was looking at the wrong girl, the man said, grinning at Red. I recommend you walk away, Red told him. Is that a threat? The man laughed. It's a warning. All right then. Hit me, the man said, pointing to his cheek. He moved closer to Red, leaning in toward her. Do it. Hit me. Very well, Red said. With incredible speed, Red grabbed the back of the man's head and slammed his face into the table. The man's forehead bounced off the wooden surface and his unconscious body slid to the floor. The room went silent as everyone turned to the source of the commotion. Looks like he had a little too much, Red said loudly. Most returned to their activities, and after a few more suspicious glances, the rest followed suit. Sorry about that, Red said to the woman. Now, about the money. I'll take half now and half when I've eliminated the wolf pack. But if you fail, we need the other half to hire someone else, the woman said. We may not have enough otherwise. Red gave a short, sarcastic laugh. If I can't kill this pack, no one can. After receiving the first half of her payment, Red spent a large portion of it on restocking supplies, a great deal of this being ammunition and fuel. Having finished her business here, and having been given specific directions towards her destination, Red slid onto her motorcycle and pulled on a pair of driving goggles, before leaving the town in the dust. The drive had always been Red's favorite part of the hunt. The open road and the wind in her face had a certain allure to it that nothing else could seem to match. Along the broken and overgrown roads leading toward their client's old home, Red spotted a great many reminders of the apocalyptic world in which she now lived. Cars lay alongside the road, stripped of parts, slashed open, or consumed by the overwhelming return of plant life. In other places lay the bones of both beasts and men, seemingly locked in combat over a battle which had long since been lost. After all, despite the heavy losses suffered by humanity, they had managed to force the wolves back to their dens, at least for a little while. Raids were becoming a more frequent occurrence, many causing such terrors as those inflicted upon the town Red now approached. The signs of destruction were clear. Doors broken down, gates ripped off their hinges, shattered glass littering the streets. But what really stood out to Red was the stench of decay wafting toward her. Though the townspeople had taken the time to bury their dead, they had left the corpses of their attackers rotting in the streets. Besides the gruesome bodies of wolves, bloodstains seemed to have painted the colony in red, leaving a horrific image difficult for anyone to witness, let alone those who had once called it home. Even Red, having seen such bloodshed before, was beginning to feel nauseated from the putrid smell in the air. After parking her bike, Red wrapped her cloak around her mouth and nose, stifling the stench, and then began searching for a decent set of tracks. The asphalt, cement, and dry ground all made for poor print, but Red suspected a trail of blood could lead her to her targets. She paused at a set of claw marks dug into a door. They clearly belonged to a wolf, but one much larger than Red had ever encountered. She made a grimace and stepped away from the scratches. There were many places in which it seemed that someone had taken their last breath, pools of blood holding their shape into the cement. But any tracks that could be discerned from the mess ended a short distance later with the corpse of a wolf still fastened to the ground, fur matted with blood. Presumably these deaths were caused by those avenging their fallen, but they provided no aid for Red now. A subtle noise ruptured Red's quiet thoughts, and she tossed a glance behind her. Sure enough, a wolf had broken free of whatever makeshift prison had held it captive, and it was now dashing at her with teeth bared. It leapt into the air, claws outstretched, targeting Red. With incredible speed, Red spun around, drew her gun, and fired in a single fluid motion, hitting the wolf dead center in the chest and dropping it to the ground. While this made for a brilliant spectacle, it put Red no closer to tracing the deadly pack back to its den. However, in the process of stowing her weapon, Red happened to spot a trail of bloody paw prints leading out of town. Confirming the path to be true, Red returned to her motorcycle, sliding into the seat and starting it up. Several minutes later, and the trail had long since run out, leaving Red to assume the direction of the pack. She had already left the road behind and now found herself dodging rocks and trees at 100 miles an hour. Objects flew by in a blur, but Red was a near-perfect rider, experienced on a variety of terrain. A flash of fur caught her eye up ahead. She cut her speed a little, reaching for a pistol as the wolf leapt into view and charged toward her. Red aimed the gun and fired 2 shots, centering them on the wolf's heart. The beast tumbled to the ground, but another quickly took its place. Red fired another couple of shots as she drove by, ending the wolf before it could strike. But as soon as she turned around, another pounced on her, knocking her from her bike. Red landed square in her back, pain shooting up her spine. Luckily, she already had a pistol in her hand. As the wolf prepared to slash open her face, Red shoved the pistol into the creature's chest, burying it into the beast's fur before pulling the trigger. She heaved the limp corpse off herself and stood up, only to realize that she was surrounded. A pack of wolves was closing in on her from all sides. Red glanced at her bike, which had tumbled to a halt a little ways away. But she knew she would never get it moving fast enough. She was going to have to make a stand. She fired 2 shots, bringing down one beast, and kicked out the empty barrel, loading another in its place. She then drew her other pistol and began firing at the wolves to either side of her. As soon as one of the beasts drops, another seemed to take its place, sheer numbers beginning to overwhelm the hunter. She backed her way to a tree, using it to cover her from behind, still firing at the approaching attackers. Hearing a noise behind her, Red rounded the tree, guns drawn, and found herself staring down the barrel of a shotgun. Behind the weapon was a young man about Red's age, staring at her with suspicious eyes. The two locked eyes for a moment, guns pointed, neither of them trusting the other not to pull the trigger. Finally, the young man made a nod toward the wolf behind Red. Red made a similar motion in recognition before spinning around and putting a bullet through the beast. The young man turned to a wolf approaching from his right and pulled the trigger, creating a rather violent mess. Working together almost seamlessly, the pair managed to fight off the remaining wolves, Red keeping them at bay with expert precision, and the man splattering as it got too close. When the last wolf dropped to the ground, the pair took a moment to breathe, letting their tensed muscles relax a little. "You know, you should consider a hat," the man said with a grin. "A hood can limit your peripheral vision." Red paused for a moment, as if considering. She then spun around, drawing her pistol and firing past the man, killing the wolf behind him. The man stared at the wolf, seemingly at a loss for words. "You should consider a hood," Red said sarcastically. "A hat can limit your hearing." The man laughed. "I suppose that's fair," he said. "My name's Jack Woodman. And you are?" "Red Riding Hood," Red said, reloading her pistols. "Well, that is an interesting name," Jack said. Red rolled her eyes. "So, what are you doing out here?" "I happen to be a wolf hunter." Red raised an eyebrow. "Well, maybe I'm a bit more of a survivalist," Jack said, pausing for a second. "Or maybe I'm just crazy." "I believe it," Red said, looking rather unamused. "But that doesn't really answer my question." Jack stopped, looking a bit more serious this time. "All right then. My family was killed by wolves. I want payback." "Join the club," Red said, searching for her bike. "I'd love to," Jack said, returning the sarcastic tone. "Where are we going?" "We," Red asked, examining her bike. "We are not going anywhere. I've got an execution order to fill. Those wolves weren't the only ones in this area." "So you'd be looking for their lair, then?" Jack asked, raising his eyebrows. "Yes," Red said, getting on the motorcycle. "And I suppose you know where it is?" "Perhaps." "Well, maybe you could tell me?" "Only if I can tag along." "I could just threaten to shoot you if you don't," Red said, pulling out one of her pistols. "It's like you think I care." "Fine," Red said, holstering her weapon. "Let's go." "Thank you, my lady," Jack said, giving a mock bow before hopping on the back of the bike. "There's a cave just beyond the edge of the woods, northeast of here. I'd bet anything that that's what you're looking for. Hey, if you're doing this for money, do I get a cut?" Red started the motorcycle, drowning out any farther conversation, and steered the bike northeast before taking off. After driving the remaining length of the wooded area, the pair found the cave just as Jack had described. The mouth of the cave seemed surprisingly large, being big enough to drive a truck through. Red pulled up to the entrance and parked the bike. "You sure you want to do this?" Jack asked. "I've heard rumors about a great beast near here. I started the job. I'm going to finish it," Red said. "If you're scared, you can leave." "I'm not scared," Jack said, looking into the cave. "Just concerned." And with that, the pair drew their weapons and entered the cave. The cave seemed to go on forever into the darkness, and the pair began to question their choices. With what little light remained from behind them, the pair could make out scratches along the walls, presumably from dozens of razor-sharp claws racing along them, as their owners searched for new meat. Red thought she noticed a spot of dried blood just before the cave lost all illumination. Jack began to reach for a flashlight, but Red stopped him. "Look," she whispered, guiding him ahead. A light shined down in the distance, an apparent skylight for the cave. The ray managed to illuminate every corner of the wolf den before them. From the light filtering in, Red and Jack could see the wolf pack pacing the den. But the sight that caught their attention was the large alpha male lying among them. Upon seeing the creature, Jack seemed to find himself at an unusual loss for words. Even Red seemed struck by the size of the beast, measuring almost twice her height as it lay stretched out on the rock floor. "How the hell did it get that big?" Jack whispered, still staring at the beast. The creature's ears seemed to perk at Jack's words, and suddenly the wolf leapt to its feet and let out a deafening howl. Red and Jack covered their ears as the tremendous noise bounced off the walls and out the cave mouth, the sheer force of it practically bringing them to their knees. When the howling finally came to an end, the alpha wolf bared its fangs at the two hunters and charged forward, the rest of the pack following close behind. "We never outrun it," Jack said. "We're gonna have to fight it right here." "For once, you're right," Red said, firing 2 shots at the tremendous beast. The monster didn't even flinch. Growing concerned, Red quickly turned her attention to the other wolves, picking off 2 of them before the pack reached the humans. The gigantic beast lunged at them with razor fangs, forcing the pair to split up. Distracted by the giant before him, Jack failed to notice the wolf beside him until its claws drew red lines across his arm. Jack cried out in pain, grabbing his injured limb. Turning to his attacker, he gritted his teeth and brought the gun up far enough to fire it, destroying the wolf and sending daggers of pain rippling through his arm. He fought through it and fell another of the beasts, the pain in his arm gradually numbing. He took the opportunity to fire at the giant attacking Red, but the shot served only to piss off the beast. It let out a growl and charged at Jack, who nimbly avoided the attack, before the creature slammed into the cave wall. One of the other wolves made a swipe at Jack, but he blocked it with the shotgun, then countered with the butt of his weapon, and finally put the beast down with a blast in the face. Meanwhile, Red was fighting her own battles. She sent a quick kick to the nose of one of her attackers, which let out a cry before quickly returning to strike. Red put a bullet through its eye before it could rip off her face. She then took out one of the wolves behind Jack and shot another point blank before turning her attention to the alpha male. Unfortunately, her pistol still didn't seem to be doing much damage. Jack backed his way toward Red, keeping his eyes on the giant. "Is that all the little ones?" Jack asked. "No," Red said. She lined up a shot and took out another wolf. "But that is." The large wolf lunged forward and the pair barely avoided the razor claws from its sweeping arm. "Any ideas how to take down the big fella?" Red asked, firing another shot at the beast. "One," Jack replied, taking a shot as well. "But you're not going to like it." "I won't know that till I hear it," Red said, ducking a swipe. "We use your bike." Red paused, raising an eyebrow at Jack. Then, as if coming to some terrible revelation, her face turned grim. "You're right," Red said, frowning. "I don't like it." "Got a better plan?" Jack asked, diving out of the way of another attack. Red gritted her teeth. "This better work because I like that bike a hell of a lot more than I like you." "Good, because I hate you," Jack said sarcastically. And with that, Red sprinted for the mouth of the cave, leaving Jack to the beast. Jack aimed the shotgun and fired another round, slowing the beast. He quickly outmaneuvered the creature and came up behind it for another shot. He pulled the trigger and heard a deafening click. Jack cursed and dropped the shotgun, pulling out an axe and swinging it at the monster's leg. The wolf seemed to flinch but quickly recovered, swinging a gigantic furry arm at Jack and throwing him across the cave. He slid along the ground until his head collided with the wall, dazing him. The beast started toward him as Jack fought to stay focused, but the wolf stopped suddenly, turning its attention to the mouth of the cave. Jack began to hear the sounds of a motorcycle echoing through the cave. Red guided the bike to its intended destination and jumped off, hitting the ground and firing her pistol almost instantaneously. The front tire of the bike popped, and the bike began to spiral, the back end rising into the air. Red quickly fired off another shot, piercing the gas tank and causing a small explosion that briefly lit up the cave. Jack rolled over and covered his head, shielding himself from the blast. Both the force of the blast and the shrapnel from it sent the monster crashing to the ground. Red sprinted to the limp body of the wolf and emptied her weapon into its head, assuring its death. After which she dropped to the ground, sitting down and propping her arms on her legs before letting out a sigh. "I'm okay," Jack said, sitting against the wall. "Just, in case you're worried." "You owe me a bike," Red said, still trying to catch her breath. "You owe me a cut of the reward," Jack said, struggling to raise his arm. "Fair enough," Red said. She let out a sigh. "It's going to be a long walk."